Good morning, I'm Frank Powers, and this is Lifestyle Tucson, the program where I speak to our neighbors, the people behind the scenes of our amazing organizations, small businesses, and nonprofits. Our friends are informing you how they serve our community, and they are here to give you updates on future projects. Let's make some new friends today. Music speaks to the soul, and Tucson attracts a lot of talent from around the world to our cultural city, and this week we have some VIPs from Africa. The African Children's Choir is a program of a larger international organization called Music for Life, which provides thousands of impoverished children throughout Africa with education, discipleship, and leadership skills needed to rise above their conditions so they can bring positive, lasting change to their families, communities, and countries. Music for Life has been working in the continent of Africa for over 40 years, helping promote the dignity and unlimited ability of the African child around the world, being a voice for millions of suffering children who cannot speak for themselves. The program provides for the children's well-being and quality education, utilizing the transformative power of music. They teach Christian principles through leading by example and bring relief and development to African nations in crisis. Today, I'm fortunate to speak with Lisa Bile and Greg Silverman of the Desert Hope Lutheran Church, who is hosting the African Children's Choir on February 9th at 9:30 a.m. That's next week. Welcome to Lifestyle Tucson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I am very excited to talk to you. I'm glad that we finally got together because it took a little work getting this all together, because what a big deal it is for the thing that you guys are helping put on. Is this the first time that you're having the African Children's Choir at your church?
So Lisa brought this to my attention, that the choir could be coming to town and maybe coming to our church. And the way she knew about it is because I think that you all had seen them at one of your churches in the past, yes?
Right, correct. Yeah, so they have been in town before, but I do believe this is the first time Desert Hope has hosted them.
This is, again, why I love Tucson. I was just talking to the Tucson Folk Festival a moment ago. And again, talking about all the world and regional music that we have, as well as some native music that we have that's specific to our region. And the Southwest, whether it's our food, our music, or our art, is this amazing cultural hub. And I love what is happening with this organization and bringing these kids here. So tell me, from your experience of you saying that you did see them once at a different church, you see them perform?
I did.
Tell me all about it.
They are special. There's no way that you experience their concert without coming out just with lots of energy, lots of optimism. They're super energetic. They're very creative. Their music is very good, and they travel the world. So to have them here in Tucson is really special.
It really is something. And what an interesting cause for it all. And a lot of the kids they work with and come from Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Uganda?
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Uganda. Yeah.
Uganda, right? Okay. So, see, I'm an average Joe. I'm just a fool hosting a radio show, learning with everybody as I talk. Because again, that's what is great about hosting this. Is I do get to meet a lot of folks. They're doing great things in town. Nice. So I do love everything that's going on. Tell me a little bit more and everything that you do know about the African Children's Choir, because they've been doing it for 40 years. They've been doing it since 1984. So they're about to hit 41. It's a big year for them. And again, it's a big year for these kids that get to really come visit, see America, and see what's going on around here. And they must bring that back with them and carry that experience forever, because it's got to be quite unique.
I was talking with one of the people from Music for Life just the other day, and it sounds like a fellow named Ray Barnett was the founder from the 1970s. His first experience was he was on some kind of a trip to Uganda, and one of the children, I think maybe he was driving one of the children. I hope I'm getting the story right. He was driving one of the children, and he started to sing. The African child started to sing, and he was singing with such hopefulness, and he seemed to have such resilience that even with circumstances so terrible, there was civil war and so forth, the child had been through a lot. Ray Barnett started to think to himself, what if the West could start to see the hearts of these African children? And within a period of time, they started forming choirs of the kids and bringing them to the United States. And this is changing the kids' lives. You know, they're learning new culture, learning English and so forth, but they're also just getting a whole lot more hope for the future. And so now, yeah, as you were saying, that seemed to start 1984, so this is a 40th year anniversary within this past year or so.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you got to love giving hope, because that's something. And it's something that I'm sure that you feel from your experience of witnessing them sing. Tell me again, let's keep talking about what it was when you did see them perform, because that's what we're here about. And I even found that you can listen to the African Children's Choir on Apple Music. I was listening to it a little bit ago. And not only that, I mean, some of it's banging. I'm going to play a one track I found on one of their newest ones. I was like, this is excellent. Like, it's a really good hit.
Yeah,
So,
they're very talented.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, part of what's really special about it is that what we as a church are providing is host families. So the kiddos and an adult with them are staying in people's homes. And
Isn't that something?
Yeah, so it's experiencing the concert, which is beautiful and wonderful, but it's also interacting with them going home in people's homes, experiencing all the differences that will look like over the time that they're traveling, all the different homes and experiences, through the education. And they are in school on the road the whole time. In fact, part of what we need to do is provide a few hours of space so they can have school while they're here. And so that, too, is giving them opportunities and opening their eyes. And one thing I saw in all the concerts is that at one part, they will have each child come up, introduce their name and what they want to be when they grow up.
Wow.
And it's most often doctors, teachers, nurse. It's things they've seen and experienced, but it's opened their world. That was not something that they even envisioned, I'm sure, in their small towns.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
way they lived.
How could they? Because right? But
Right.
I do love the hosting, and they get to stay with a family. How long are the kids in town?
They are arriving at our church at 3:00 on Saturday, and they leave on their bus late morning on Monday. So that will be 2 nights with their host family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know how long they actually are like on tour? Because I'm sure then they go to another city and do something and stay with another family. What do you know how long they are actually like touring, or no?
I don't know how long their tour goes, but they are coming up to Mesa at some point in the next month. So I suppose that they're touring around and still in the area some weeks from now.
Okay, because that's how bands even do it. It's a loop. Like you do a Southwest loop.
And I think
you're in the region.
It might actually be African Children's Choirs, plural. So there might be various tours going on at different times because the kids are aging in and aging out of the program all the time.
Yep.
I think they're having maybe multiple choirs reaching multiple parts of the United States simultaneously. So it's quite an operation.
It is quite an operation. Again, that's why for 40 years they've just been going and growing. And it's got to be giving them a lot of great results. What else because you did have a great conversation with the organization that is behind this. Tell me a little bit more about Music for Life and anything you know about them and how anyone can get involved.
It sounds like it has a lot to do with providing resources so these kids can be educated.
Yes.
And education is not a gimme necessarily in other nations. You know, we have this mentality that everybody gets to go to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that all kids get to go to school. And that's not the case out there where some of these children are coming from. So if they're not able to afford school, and a lot of families are living day to day, enough food for one day and things like that. So if they don't have enough money to pay for school, then school's not in the picture. But for families that can send even just one of their children to school, it can make a 180 for the whole family just to have one or more of those kids getting an education. And so a big part of what's going on here is that the children come and sing for us, they bless us, and then we have an opportunity to donate into their organization, which helps the kids pay for education back at their home nations in Africa.
It's very important. Again, I've talked to orphanages in Nogales, and I've talked to other organizations that it's all about helping children. And sometimes I know us Americans, we really have a tough time getting perspective of people across the street, let alone across the nation, let alone across the world or the border. And that's the thing. You have to care about kids. And you got to realize what we have here in our society is a lot of comfort. And a lot of other nations do not have that. They do not have that opportunity. And as you put it in perspective of that, some of us really just do look at like just education and homework as like, right? Whereas some kids would beg for an education. And that's important. A lot of people talk about picking yourself up by your bootstraps around here. And I remember when I learned when kids can't afford shoes. So how are kids supposed to pick themselves up by their bootstraps when they can't afford boots?
And the ways that the kids are chosen for the choir is not based on who's got the biggest voice or who can dance the most. It's not like American Idol or The Voice.
Okay.
The way the kids are chosen is based on which family desperately needs the resources for education the most.
Wow.
And
when you put it like that, that's almost a huge responsibility on the kid to a degree.
Yeah.
Like to just like, all right, you're going on tour and you're going to help the family by doing it. And again, that's another thing that we all take for granted. It's you see it in movies where it is like, you know, the 10-year-old kids helping like the wayward mom who might be an alcoholic, these like characters. Like this exists. This exists. If you've not had someone in your life where the kid is taking care of the household, think of how fortunate a lot of us are that that's not something that we're faced with all the time. And that's a big deal. These kids are literally taking this opportunity to then help their household. That's wild. That's a wild concept to think about.
And to raise resources for others in their towns or areas. Yes.
No, that's huge. And it's all about community. So speaking of community, let's talk about community and let's talk about the church. Tell me about your great church, because that's what the best part about church is community. And I'll tell you, one of my best friends, he's only become religious in the past few years as he's become a dad and was changing some of his life and wound up going and volunteering at a church because he wanted the free cake. But then it turns out there was a good message at the church. Nice. And it turns out they were having some votings on things that were a bit more progressive. He's like, I would want to help this place become a bit more progressive. And as time's gone on, he's now on the board of that church and he goes to these big events. And it's not like he's, I'll just say, overzealous with it. But he reads the Bible and it brings him to tears. And this is a guy that I'm like, you? Because something was missing in his 20s. He had a lot of negativity and whatever. But as he found his family and had a daughter, you start to, and I mean, he's Homer Simpson, this guy. He's basic. But like, the Simpsons are one of the only families that goes to church on television. It's a fact, which isn't that an interesting fact?
I don't watch The Simpsons, so I didn't know they went to church.
Right. So the Simpsons go to church. The Simpsons have famously always gone to church. And back in the 90s when they come out, actually 89, that's a part of my growing up. I went to church growing up, and a lot of kids do. My nephew right now, he has to go to church because he's in second grade. And I put it like that. He has to. That's their perspective sometimes. And that's been the difference with time. So tell me about your church, because some people can have a really mixed message when it comes to religion. Plenty of religions do a lot of terrible things in the name of the Lord. And sometimes that's the headline. Whereas actually religion is about, getting together, having community, becoming neighbors, volunteering, and he's done all this. So let's talk about how great your church is and what it means to you.
I've heard it said about our church that it's the friendliest church in Tucson.
There you go. That's awesome.
And it's located on Speedway, close to Kolb. It's tucked away off of Speedway, so you have to go down a bit of a road to get to it. But the sign's right out there in front. And as you come in the door, you're greeted by smiling faces. After a while, if you know some folks, you get greeted by some hugs as well. The service starts at 9:30. This particular one with the children's choir, we have two services just because we feel as though more people may come.
Yes.
So it's 9:30 and 11:30 on February 9th.
Great.
Still be able to get home in time for the Super Bowl later on that day.
Oh, there you go. The other big religion in the country.
And so the regular 9:30 service, maybe it's a little over an hour and 15, and different kinds of music, sometimes special guest musicians, including harp, there's been violin, there's been an oboe, trumpets, but regularly there's piano, drums, or electronic drums, guitar, and so forth, people singing. and enjoying that time in the presence of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. I thought it was pronounced Jesus in Tucson. My bad. But this is the Desert Hope Lutheran Church. It's 7474 East Speedway Boulevard. So go get involved. Even their phone number is 520-722-9134. If you yourself are looking for some more information, give them a call. I'm sure that they've got friendly phone calls as well.
The other thing I will say is that we're a little church. We are very much a community, a family, but we have really a heart for the broken. We pray for the broken. We are friendly, and we are, because we're a little church, we really have a focus on serving with all the other churches in town. Like, we're not a closed door, we've got it all covered. We love to work with other churches and their giftings and to really be a part of the citywide church is important to us.
Well, it is important because that's neighbors.
And the other thing is, we overtook anyone who's lived in town in the 70s. We bought the old Polish club and gutted it and made it a church. So anyone who knows where the old Polish club is, that's Desert Hope Lutheran now.
Okay. Well, there you go. Fascinating. And really great. I mean, any other just like calls to action, or give me just a good memory of just what it is for you and why is religion just as important as it is to you? Because let's just talk about that since we're talking about the church, and then we'll get back to talking about some of these kids. What has religion meant to you? Since this is what we're talking about, and I like talking to leaders of organizations, well, you might have the best answer to this question.
So in terms of faith, I feel as though God gives us a personal relationship with him. A lot of people view religion as something far off, distant. They view God as an angry God, like he's going to beat you over the head if you mess up and things like that. But Christianity is actually the only religion where God reaches down to the people in order to save them and make things right for them. My understanding is for most other religions, it's how can we measure up to please God somehow? How can we do enough good deeds? How can we be a good enough person and things like that? By contrast, faith with Jesus says, I can't measure up, but God loves me so much that he came and made things right in our relationship between me and God personally.
That's interesting. Does that give you a lot of does that give you comfort?
It results in hope. It results in hope and comfort and relief. You know, if I was always trying to measure up and falling short, it'd be very discouraging after a while. What I really needed was some kind of a divine rescue to pluck me out of my mess because I screw things up and make mistakes and fall short and is there some kind of God out there that's willing to just go the extra mile to rescue me, since I'm certainly not good enough to reach him on my own.
That's interesting. A humble.
It's a humble stance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would echo the hope, and what faith and my personal relationship with God has brought me is purpose. I would say, the ability to be content and not to just know that I have a purpose in this world, and it may be just one person today, but it's, I've arrived, and it's just loving people when the opportunity comes up to talk about my faith, to share that with them, always to try to share what God can, my faith has offered me hope in the midst of grief, joy in the midst of grief. Those are things that I can't explain in a tangible earthly way, but it's what I have experienced in grief that I've walked. And so what I would say that purpose, hope are big ones for me in this time. I'm a homemaker. After working for 20 years, I got married and had a blended family, and I started to feel like my value went from pretty accomplished in my work life to, oh, now I'm just a mom, and it's been important for me to know that every role on this side of heaven can be used by the Lord to bring others to know him.
You matter. That's one of the biggest
Yeah.
things that I know and tell kids all the time. And there is something to that, to know that you're enough. That's exactly right. And don't ever say just a mom. How dare you?
I know. No.
You mean hero? Okay, that's what you got to be. And look what you are being, because again, by doing this, you're even part of a program that's inviting a bunch of kids here, and then they're getting to have some kind of surrogate moms for a weekend as they travel around and be generous and be warm and be able to do that. That is, I got plenty of friends. They're not good at being a mom, nor are they moms. Like, it takes something to be able to be patient, caring, care for others, care for children, and to be open. You know, again, that's a really important role that I believe all of us understand.
Yeah,
We all have a
I'll
mom.
say that's not how my family views me, or I would say that was more of what I
I'm sure
looking
of it.
from a societal
Yes.
perspective. But one thing I do want to say about the kids coming and what you just said is what we've been sharing with the host families is it's a blessing to host them. Like,
believe it.
They, the choir is very appreciative. That's a cost they don't have to pay, so that more money goes to the education. The meals that we provide also help with that. But to have those kids in our homes and to be able to talk with them about their realities, not in a deep, intrusive way, but just, for our kids to gain from that experience. And then for them, I mean, it's really something you can't describe. And they're more of a blessing to have in our home than we are to them, I think.
I believe it, but I do got to ask this, because the problem with touring rock stars is that they have a lot of high demands. So what are the riders attached that these kids bring to these homes? Only green M&Ms? What are they making all these families do? Because obviously they're big celebrities.
One of the things, they actually do give instructions on what the kids want to eat and don't eat and so forth. But one of the things that I remembered from it is that don't put too much food on the kids' plates because they're required to eat all of it.
Fascinating.
So it's much easier for them to go back for seconds, thirds, and so forth than if you'd want to just pile a lot of food on for them. They're
that's
your
America.
guests and so forth. But they said don't do that because they're required to finish everything that's on the plate. So let them come and ask for more.
That's an interesting, isn't that a little interesting thing?
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. That's so fascinating.
That's not the same way they did it at my mother's house. They just pile it on.
That's right. Oh, come on. You're wasting away. Keep eating. That's right. I come from a big Italian family, so that's how it's going to be. But I'll tell you, I really enjoyed talking. I know that might have been some heavy questions just to ask you. So why religion? Like, way to go. All right. Because that is. And I'm glad that you do love the opportunity to talk about it, because I love the opportunity to try to give more people hope. That's what this is all about. You just heard that we advertised maybe the friendliest place in Tucson. And if you're looking for something, maybe that's the place to go, because community is what keeps us really together. Loneliness is an epidemic in our country. It is. The Surgeon General declared that a year and something ago. And I've been kind of talking about that a lot, because I know that volunteering is the way to make friends. Getting involved with organizations like yours, or getting involved in the church perhaps, is a way to find a community and to find people. And when you're just spreading that good positive message, that's just a good time for everybody. And I know it's hard to do things, but a once a week commitment, that's about an hour with a bunch of happy folks spreading good messages, is probably a good way to invest in your time and invest in yourself. Right? And I'm not even the most religious guy. I mean, I'm just talking to nice people. What can I tell you? Because the nice people that I'm talking to today are Lisa Bile and Greg Silverman of the Desert Hope Lutheran Church, hosting the African Children's Choir February 9th, 2 times at 9:30 and again at 11?
11:30.
11:30, so you got plenty of time to get back home to that Super Bowl. It's really been a great time talking to you and Music for Life, whose mission is to help Africa's most vulnerable children today so they can help Africa tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Frank.
This was Lifestyle Tucson. Bing bong bing, time for a recap. What a fine conversation that was. I love that Lisa, of course, has never seen The Simpsons. Why would she see The Simpsons? I'm pretty sure that The Simpsons are Presbyterian. That's their religious denomination. Let me see. I'm going to look it up. In the series The Simpsons, the family attends services led by Reverend Lovejoy. The church's denomination is identified as the Western branch of American Reformed Presbyterianism. In the episode The Father, the Son, and the Holy Guest Star, it's generally interpreted as representing a multitude of American Protestant traditions in general, and not one specific denomination. So there's a little history of The Simpsons for you, and some of the religion that is on television these days, when it was more commonplace for all your families on sitcoms to attend church, even if it was just off screen and they're returning from it. It is not as common today on television or in your average home to be attending church. So it's always an interesting conversation for me to talk to religious folks and to just talk about it in general, because sometimes, like I say, it gets a bad rap in the headlines and a lot of people can associate it with, oh, but what about people that do this in the name of that? But really the overall message of it is one of goodness, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about religion. Again, I grew up religious, and then I got all punk rock and I get all angry in my teenage years, and you come up with other things, and that's just the way it is. So you can see I struggle with my relationship with it, but I don't get angry anymore like I used to when I was younger about certain viewpoints that others are going to inevitably have in our country, especially in our country today, because what world we're living in. But enough out of me, because that's not what we're talking about, even though that's what we were just talking about. Because I really do love talking about our community and our neighbors in it, and we got a lot of them, and that's the point. So it's always fun to get together, and a good place to get together is going to be at the African Children's Choir's performance at the Desert Hope Lutheran Church at 7474 East Speedway Boulevard. It is going to be at 9:30 and 11:30 on February 9th, with plenty of time to get home and watch the Super Bowl. And again, I love that these kids are staying with families. You got to imagine that some of these folks are going to be having maybe Super Bowl parties, or maybe they're going to get together and have a big Super Bowl party. But these kids are going to even experience that big cultural event that to me is one of the last unifying things that a bunch of us watch all at the same time, as it is, of course, sports. So fun for them to be experiencing some of that this weekend as well. So I hope you got something from this episode. You can get more information about the African Children's Choir and Music for Life at africanchildrenschoir.com, and follow them on Instagram. And also, they do have their music over on Apple Music. I was going to play some of it, but in the rebroadcasts on YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff, it would be muted. You can't use other people's music, but you can just go listen to it. They've got some samples out there, and they are available on some of the platforms that this podcast is available on. So let's just get to the wrap. Because I want to thank our new friends at the African Children's Choir and the Desert Hope Lutheran Church and Music for Life for joining me today. You've been listening to Lifestyle Tucson. If you're a nonprofit that would like to be on the show, email lifestyletucson@gmail.com. For more information about this program or to listen to something you may have missed, go to the Sunday Mornings page on klpx.com, kfma.com, mixfm.com, or espntucson.com. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and Audible, or wherever fine podcasts are singing. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Lifestyle Tucson, because I'm your BFF, your best Frank forever, Frank Powers. Toot toot Tucson. I love you the most.